Imagine a young dancer whose passion for movement is almost snuffed out by hurtful words, but who rises to redefine what it means to be strong, beautiful, and unstoppable. In a world where acceptance is too often withheld, one brave girl's journey through pain, resilience, and triumphant redemption will inspire you to believe that every step, no matter how heavy, can lead to a victory on your own stage. Stay with us as we unfold the incredible true story of Imani, a dancer whose fierce spirit and unyielding determination transformed cruelty into a movement for change. The studio lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the polished floor as 11-year-old Imani stood frozen, the echo of Ms. Collins's words ringing in her ears, "You're too heavy, you can't keep up with the others." The room fell silent. Her classmates averted their eyes, and in that crushing moment, Imani's lifelong passion for dance, once a wellspring of joy and self-expression, suddenly felt tarnished by cruelty. That harsh judgment, delivered in a single breath, would set in motion a journey that challenged the very fabric of the dance world and sparked a nationwide conversation about body image and discrimination in competitive environments. Later that night, in the soft glow of a nightlight, dancing shadows played upon the walls of Imani's modest bedroom as she moved with a grace that belied her years. Each step, each elegant turn, was executed with the precision of someone born to dance. In the doorway, her parents watched in a quiet reverence, a mixture of pride and wonder shining in their eyes as they witnessed their daughter's passion. As Imani danced, the scene shifted in time, transporting us back to a sunny afternoon 6 years earlier. At the tender age of 5, Imani had timidly stepped into the welcoming space of Ms. Monroe's dance studio. Clutching her mother's skirt with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation, she entered the polished wood-floored room. But in that very instant, something magical unfurled within her. The music began, and Imani's eyes lit up with delight. A smile of pure joy spread across her face as she moved with an innate sense of rhythm and poise. While her peers fumbled and giggled over simple steps, Imani's arms floated as if weightless, and her feet found their place as though drawn by an invisible muse. Ms. Monroe, clearly impressed, exchanged knowing glances with Imani's mother while soft murmurs of admiration rippled among the watching parents. "She's a natural," someone whispered. Oblivious to the attention, Imani danced on, her face a picture of concentration and bliss. At the end of class, breathless with excitement, she ran to her parents and pleaded, "Can I come back tomorrow?" Her father, chuckling warmly as he scooped her up into his arms, promised, "We'll see about more classes." That day marked the beginning of a love affair with dance, a love that would eventually be tested in ways she could never imagine. Over the following weeks, Imani's passion blossomed. Between her daily routines, she practiced positions, experimented with dance moves in unexpected corners of her home, and hummed ballet tunes as she drifted off to sleep. Recognizing the fire that had ignited within their daughter, her parents rearranged their schedules to accommodate additional dance classes. Those early memories, though faint, would later provide the strength needed for the dark days that lay ahead. Fast forward to a recent afternoon when Imani, exhausted yet exhilarated, finally crawled into bed after an intense practice session. Clutching her worn ballet slippers close to her chest, she drifted into sleep with a contented smile, her dreams filled with visions of grand stages and triumphant performances. Unbeknownst to her, the path ahead would force her to confront challenges that would test not only her artistry but her very self-worth. The next day, the dance studio doors swung open as Imani stepped inside, her heart pounding with a cocktail of excitement and apprehension. She made her way to the changing room, her trembling fingers tying the laces of her pointe shoes. There was an electric tension in the air, a charged atmosphere that made every nerve in her body tingle. Joining the other girls on the polished wood floor for warm-up stretches, Imani tried to focus on her routine. Yet, an unsettling feeling of being scrutinized crept over her. Suddenly, Ms. Collins's commanding voice broke through the low hum of activity. "Show us the new routine," she ordered, and with that, Imani stepped forward, leaving the murmurs of her peers behind. As the music began, Imani launched into a complex sequence of steps, each move executed with her muscles straining to keep pace with the intricate choreography. Every pirouette, leap, and precise footwork was a battle against the weight of Ms. Collins's disapproving gaze. Midway through the routine, Imani's breath grew labored, and her legs began to feel like they were weighed down by an invisible force. In a particularly challenging turn, she stumbled. Ms. Collins's voice lashed out like a whip, "Sloppy, Imani. How do you expect to keep up when you're carrying all that extra weight?" The words struck her like a physical blow. Her cheeks flushed with humiliation, and unshed tears glistened in her eyes as she continued to dance, feeling the weight of every disappointed stare from her classmates. When the music finally faded, Imani held her final pose with a heavy heart, her chest heaving from exertion, while Ms. Collins sneered, "If you can't keep up, you'll drag the whole team down." Imani bit her lip silently as she returned to the bar. For the first time, when she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror, she did not see the dancer she so loved. Instead, she saw every imperfection magnified under the harsh studio lights, the flaws that Ms. Collins had so cruelly pointed out. Yet, amid the humiliation, a spark of defiance began to kindle within her. Though wounded, Imani vowed silently to prove that she belonged on that stage, regardless of what anyone thought of her appearance. That spark ignited a tumultuous internal battle. In the quiet sanctuary of her bedroom, Imani's mind became her fiercest critic. Every harsh word from Ms. Collins echoed relentlessly, "Too heavy, can't keep up," dragging the team down, each syllable hammering away at her self-esteem. The once joyful dancer now saw only perceived flaws when she looked at her reflection. The enticing aroma of her mother's homemade spaghetti wafted up the stairs, yet Imani's appetite had vanished. She mumbled weakly in the kitchen, "I'm not feeling well," and hurried to her room, seeking refuge from the mounting anxiety. As the days turned into weeks, the vivacity that had once defined her dimmed noticeably. Her mother noticed the untouched dinner plates and the muffled sobs behind closed doors. The once chatty girl grew withdrawn, her once bright energy replaced by monosyllabic responses and a pervasive sadness. Night after night, sleep eluded Imani. She lay tossing and turning, her mind a chaotic swirl of self-doubt and anxiety. Every misstep and every stumble replayed over and over in her thoughts, each one magnified until her reflection in the mirror seemed to betray her. The weight of expectations, those imposed by Ms. Collins, her family, and herself, pressed down on her chest so heavily that breathing became a struggle. In those long, sleepless hours, Imani wondered how much longer she could maintain this exhausting charade. The girl who once soared on stage now felt imprisoned in a body that seemed to betray her at every turn. Then came another fateful day. The dance studio loomed before Imani like a foreboding fortress. Its mirrored walls reflected her exhaustion as she trudged inside, her limbs heavy from another night without rest. Joining the other girls for warm-up exercises, she could sense Ms. Collins's critical gaze narrowing with disapproval. "Your arabesques are sloppy," Ms. Collins barked. "How do you expect to compete if you can't even maintain proper form?" The stinging rebuke made Imani's cheeks burn with shame. From the corner of her eye, she noticed two girls whispering behind cupped hands, their eyes darting in her direction. The imagined snickers and hushed criticisms sent a wave of nausea through her. As the class progressed into a group routine, Imani's fatigue took its toll, her movements, once fluid and graceful, now became disjointed and clumsy. Struggling to keep up, she fought against her own body until, during a challenging turn, her ankle gave way and she crashed to the floor. Ms. Collins's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and unforgiving, "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're too heavy to keep up, Imani. Your weight is holding you back and dragging the entire team down." Her words left Imani gasping, as if all the oxygen had been drained from the room. Searching desperately for a kind face among her classmates, she was met only with averted gazes and uncomfortable silence. In that moment, something within Imani snapped. Overwhelmed by the pain of humiliation, she scrambled to her feet and bolted for the door, leaving her dance bag behind. Outside, the cool air hit her flushed skin as she fumbled for her phone with trembling hands. Desperation overwhelming her, she dialed her mother's number, her voice choking as she pleaded, "Please come get me. I can't do this anymore." On the curb, with her knees drawn close to her chest, Imani hugged herself tightly. The once bright flame of her passion now flickered as cold ashes of despair. The vibrant dancer who had once dreamt of endless stages now questioned if she would ever regain the strength to dance again, or if Ms. Collins's cruel words had extinguished that spark for good. Later that night, Imani's parents found her curled up in bed, a tight, shivering ball of misery beneath the covers. The room was dark, the silence heavy with unspoken pain. Her mother's gentle calls went unanswered, met only by muffled sniffles, while her father's face darkened with a mix of anger and sorrow. Soon, Imani's younger brother, Jaden, appeared in the doorway, his small face etched with concern. Sitting on the edge of the bed, her mother placed a tender hand on Imani's trembling shoulder and murmured, "Sweetheart, can you tell us what happened?" In a voice barely above a whisper, Imani recounted the cruel, cutting words of Ms. Collins. Her father's eyes filled with anger, and her mother's eyes brimmed with tears. After a long, painful pause, her mother gathered her close and said firmly, "Listen to me, Imani. You are beautiful, talented, and worthy. No one has the right to make you feel otherwise." Her father added, "That teacher had no business speaking to you like that." A heavy silence fell as the family absorbed the pain of the day. Finally, her father asked softly, "Do you want to stop dancing?" The question hung in the air, and Imani's breath caught in her throat at the thought of abandoning the one thing she loved most. I don't know," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I love dancing, it's a part of who I am, but I'm scared to go back and face her again." Her mother stroked her hair soothingly. "You don't have to decide right now," she assured. "Take all the time you need. Whatever you choose, we're here to support you." In that moment, as the family huddled together on the bed, a fragile hope began to blossom. The path ahead was uncertain, but Imani realized that with her family's unwavering love, she would not have to face these challenges alone. In the days that followed, Imani's inner struggle raged on. She would scroll through videos of professional dancers on her phone late into the night, bodies of all shapes and sizes moving with breathtaking grace, defying the narrow standards she had been forced to accept. One video, in particular, captured her attention, a performance by a curvy ballerina whose strength and artistry were mesmerizing. The dancer's story of overcoming body shaming resonated deeply with Imani, igniting a flicker of hope. That very morning, with renewed determination, Imani approached her parents. "I want to dance again," she announced in a steady voice. "But I need your help finding a new studio." Over the next few days, the family visited several dance schools. Imani observed each class carefully, noting the instructor's styles and the atmosphere among the students. Some classes felt suffocatingly familiar with the old harsh critiques, while others showed promise but never quite fit her heart. Then, one day, they stepped into the welcoming space of Ms. Rivera's studio. The moment Imani walked through the doors of Ms. Rivera's studio, she sensed a palpable shift in the air. Photographs of dancers of all ages, sizes, and backgrounds adorned the walls, each image a celebration of diversity. During a class observation, Imani noticed how Ms. Rivera offered patient guidance and constructive feedback. After the class ended, Ms. Rivera approached Imani and invited her to join a trial session. Though fear gripped her momentarily, the sight of a diverse group of dancers laughing and chatting filled her with courage. As the music began and Ms. Rivera led the warm-up, a genuine smile crept across Imani's face. Her body moved with a freedom she had nearly forgotten, and even when she stumbled during a challenging combination, Ms. Rivera's gentle advice, "Think of it as a story you're telling with your body. What does this movement mean to you?" opened new possibilities in Imani's mind. Closing her eyes and letting the music flow through her, the steps fell naturally into place. When the class ended, the applause from her new peers left Imani feeling lighter than she had in months. The spark of determination now burned brightly within her, fueled by a sense of hope and excitement. For the first time in a long while, she felt ready to face the future. As Imani continued her journey in Ms. Rivera's studio, her heart raced with anticipation at every class. The studio, filled with warm smiles and an atmosphere of genuine acceptance, was a stark contrast to her previous experiences. Here, every dancer, regardless of shape or size, was celebrated for their unique artistry. Ms. Rivera began each session with rigorous strength and flexibility exercises that pushed Imani to her limits. Though her muscles burned and her body protested the unfamiliar poses, Ms. Rivera's constant encouragement kept her going. During one challenging sequence, when old insecurities threatened to overwhelm her, Ms. Rivera stood by her side and whispered, "Remember, Imani, dance is about expressing yourself, not about conforming to someone else's idea of perfection." With those words, Imani's self-doubt began to fade, replaced by a burgeoning confidence. Over the ensuing weeks, Imani eagerly anticipated every class. She formed genuine friendships with fellow dancers whose camaraderie slowly mended the emotional scars left by her past. One day, as the class rehearsed a new choreography, Ms. Rivera called Imani to the front. Despite a knot of anxiety forming in her stomach as memories of past humiliations resurfaced, Ms. Rivera's warm smile reassured her. "I want everyone to watch your natural rhythm and expression," she said. At first hesitant, Imani moved through the steps, and as the music swelled, she began to embody her journey, from the pain of past criticisms to the triumph of rediscovering her passion. When the music ended, the entire class erupted into applause. That evening, as Imani left the studio with flushed cheeks and a heart full of pride, she realized that the number on a scale no longer defined her. Instead, she found strength in the power of her muscles and the rhythm pulsating in her veins. The transformation in Imani's life was mirrored in her growing determination to reclaim her passion. When Ms. Rivera announced that the National Youth Dance Competition was approaching, the room buzzed with excited chatter. Yet, as the news sank in, Imani felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. The painful memories of her previous competition with Ms. Collins and her former classmates threatened to resurface. Sensing Imani's discomfort, Ms. Rivera pulled her aside and asked gently, "Is everything all right?" With a deep breath, Imani confided in her teacher about the haunting experiences of her past. Emotions poured out as she described the crushing weight of rejection and the self-doubt that had shadowed her every step. Ms. Rivera listened intently, her expression a blend of empathy and quiet determination. Then, in a moment that would forever change Imani's perspective, Ms. Rivera shared her own story. "When I was your age," she began softly, "I faced discrimination because of my ethnicity. People said I didn't have the right look for ballet. But I refused to let their narrow-mindedness define me. Instead, I channeled that pain into my dancing." Imani's eyes widened with newfound respect and admiration. "Dance," Ms. Rivera continued, "is about telling your story through movement. Every hardship you faced can become your greatest strength on stage." With those words echoing in her heart, the fear that had long held her captive began to loosen, replaced by a tentative spark of determination. In the days that followed, Imani's resolve grew stronger. She dedicated herself to endless rehearsals, each session a step toward reclaiming the joy of dance. At home, her family rallied around her. Marcus, her father, coordinated schedules to allow extra practice time, while Nicole, her mother, prepared healthy meals and offered unwavering support. Even Jaden, her ever-encouraging younger brother, made handmade signs and cheered her on at every performance. Slowly but surely, Imani's body adapted. Her legs grew stronger, her core stabilized, and she began to execute even the most challenging sequences with greater precision. With each small victory, a mastered combination here, a flawless arabesque there. Her confidence blossomed, and the dark memories of Miss Collins's criticism began to fade into the background. Yet, as the competition loomed ever closer, the pressures of expectation and self-doubt crept back in. In the quiet hours of the night, Imani's dreams turned into vivid nightmares. In one recurring nightmare, she found herself center stage under harsh, unforgiving spotlights. Her feet tangled on the floor, sending her sprawling before an audience whose cruel laughter echoed in her ears. Startled awake, her heart racing, she would find solace only in the comforting presence of her mother in the kitchen. One morning, as she recounted a particularly harrowing nightmare, her mother shared a piece of her own story, a tale of lifelong struggles with self-acceptance and the impossible standards of beauty imposed by society. "I've learned," her mother said softly, "to focus not on what my body looks like, but on what it can do." Inspired by her mother's vulnerability, Imani began a gratitude journal and created a collage of diverse dancers on her bedroom wall. Sticky notes filled with quotes about perseverance and self-love adorned her mirror. For the first time in months, when she caught her reflection, she saw a dancer, strong, determined, and ready to face the future, rather than the sum of her perceived imperfections. As the final rehearsal for the competition approached, Imani's heart pounded with anticipation and dread. In the studio, her classmates' nervous whispers filled the air as they prepared for their routines. Imani stole a glance at her reflection in the wall-length mirror, her costume glittering under the studio lights, and took a deep, steadying breath. Ms. Rivera approached her, eyes warm with encouragement, and said, "Center yourself, Imani." Closing her eyes, Imani focused on her heartbeat, exhaling slowly as she shed the weight of expectation. In that moment, the bustling studio faded away, leaving only the music and her unwavering determination. The first notes of the haunting melody filled the room, and Imani began to move with a grace that was both unexpected and transcendent. Each step, each leap, carried the deep emotions of her journey, the pain of rejection, the struggle to reclaim her passion, and the newfound hope for the future. As she twirled and leaped, the room fell into a hushed silence. Her classmates watched, mesmerized, as she poured her soul into every movement. Even Ms. Rivera stood motionless, her eyes glistening with pride. Imani was no longer dancing for judges or scores, she danced to tell her truth, to reclaim the joy that had once defined her very being. When the final notes of the routine hung in the air, Imani struck her ending pose, her chest heaving from exertion. For a suspended moment, the studio remained eerily quiet before the spell was broken by a thunderous applause. Her classmates rushed forward, enveloping her in a group hug as their voices melded into a joyful cacophony. Ms. Rivera moved through the crowd with a radiant smile, wrapping Imani in a warm embrace as she whispered, "You're ready, Imani. You're going to shine." In that overwhelming moment, as Imani caught her reflection once more, she saw not the insecure girl of the past but a storyteller, a dancer whose authenticity and resilience had transformed her from the inside out. The next day, the time for the national competition had arrived. As Imani entered the bustling venue, she was met with a sea of unfamiliar faces. Among the crowd, she spotted some of her former classmates from Ms. Collins's studio. Their whispered comments and pointed fingers stoked old insecurities. Her stomach churned, but just then, Ms. Rivera appeared beside her. Sensing Imani's anxiety, she guided her to a quiet corner and encouraged her to take slow, deep breaths. "Focus on your strength," Ms. Rivera murmured. "Remember everything you've overcome." A sudden commotion at the entrance caught Imani's attention. Her family burst through the doors, proudly clad in custom Team Imani t-shirts. Jaden waved a handmade sign, and her parents beamed with pride. A surge of love and gratitude washed over Imani, dispelling the remnants of doubt. With renewed determination, she met the judgmental stares of her former classmates head-on, no longer shrinking away. She held her head high as she prepared to take the stage. Backstage, Imani found a quiet spot to close her eyes and visualize her routine. With every breath, she recalled the countless hours of practice, the support of her family, and the transformative guidance of Ms. Rivera. In her mind, the music played out like a gentle river carrying her forward, each note a reminder of her inner strength. When the stage manager called her name, Imani stepped into the blinding spotlight. Adjusting to the brightness, she saw her family in the front row, their faces radiating unwavering support. Ms. Rivera's encouraging nod from the side bolstered her spirit. In that moment, Imani knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The auditorium plunged into darkness for a heartbeat before the first haunting notes of the chosen melody filled the space. Imani began to move, each gesture a fluid expression of raw emotion. Her movements, a seamless blend of strength and grace, told the story of her struggles, her pain, and her ultimate triumph. With every leap and twirl, she shattered the chains of self-doubt that had once bound her. The audience, spellbound by the performance, sat in hushed silence as Imani poured every ounce of her soul into the dance. When the final notes faded, she held her ending pose, her chest heaving in the quiet aftermath. Then, as if a dam had burst, the auditorium erupted in a standing ovation. The cheers and claps of the crowd washed over her like a tidal wave of validation and support. Overwhelmed by the outpouring of emotion, Imani stood frozen for a moment, scanning the sea of faces, some openly weeping, others beaming with pride. In that instant, she realized she had done more than simply dance, she had shared her truth, her pain, and her triumph with every person in the room. The applause resonated deeply within her, affirming that her journey was just beginning. After the performance, Imani staggered off the stage, her legs trembling from a mix of exhaustion and adrenaline. In the warm embrace of her family and Ms. Rivera, tears of joy mingled with sweat as the magnitude of her achievement settled in. A shaky video of her performance, captured by an audience member's phone, soon found its way online. Within days, the video went viral, amassing millions of views and igniting a wave of inspiration that challenged long-held stereotypes about dancers' bodies. News outlets began reaching out to Imani for interviews. Though initially hesitant, she found her voice growing stronger with every retelling of her journey, from the crushing weight of Ms. Collins's insults to the dark days when she nearly abandoned her passion, and finally, to the unwavering support that helped her rise above it all. Her story resonated with countless young dancers across the nation, many of whom had silently suffered under the pressures of unrealistic beauty standards. Soon, dancers from all backgrounds began coming forward to share their own experiences of body shaming and discrimination, sparking a broader movement within the dance community. Studio owners revisited their policies, instructors re-examined their teaching methods, and competition organizers redefined judging criteria to focus on artistry and expression rather than appearance. As the conversation about body positivity and inclusivity gained momentum, Imani's role evolved. Unbeknownst to her, she had become a symbol of change, a beacon of hope for dancers who had long been told they did not fit a narrow, outdated mold. The weight of this newfound responsibility settled on her shoulders, not as a burden, but as a mantle she was determined to bear. Her story, broadcast far beyond the competition hall, ignited discussions about the true meaning of dance and the importance of nurturing a dancer's mental and emotional well-being. One afternoon, Imani's journey took an unexpected turn when she found herself sitting in a quiet corner of a local coffee shop. Across from her sat Ms. Collins, her former harsh critic, who had requested a meeting. As Imani's heart pounded with a mix of trepidation and curiosity, Ms. Collins looked up from her cup and said softly, "Thank you for meeting with me." With uncharacteristic vulnerability, she continued, "I owe you an apology, Imani. My comments were inappropriate and harmful. I realize now the damage I've caused, and I am truly sorry." Caught off guard by the sincerity in Ms. Collins's voice, Imani's emotions wavered between lingering anger and a tentative empathy. Ms. Collins explained that her own struggles with maintaining a certain body image had left scars that continued to affect her even as she transitioned into teaching. "I was under immense pressure to produce winners," she admitted. I see now that I lost sight of what truly matters in dance. As the conversation unfolded, both teacher and student delved into the toxic culture that had long permeated the dance world. Imani recounted the deep impact of the relentless criticism, while Ms. Collins spoke of the internal conflicts that had driven her to be so harsh. In a moment of unexpected clarity, Ms. Collins said, "I watched your performance at the competition, and I realized something important: you dance with a passion and authenticity I rarely see. It made me question everything I thought I knew about what makes a great dancer." Though the wounds would not vanish overnight, this candid conversation marked the beginning of healing, a tentative bridge between past hurts and a future filled with possibility. Imani's triumph at the national competition resonated far beyond the dance floor. Within weeks, several prominent studios implemented new, body-positive policies, signaling a shift toward more inclusive environments. The National Dance Association, long criticized for its narrow beauty standards, initiated a comprehensive review of its practices. A task force was formed to re-examine judging criteria, costume regulations, and other aspects of dance culture, with the aim of fostering diversity and nurturing young talent. As change swept through the industry, Imani found herself thrust into the spotlight once again, this time not just as a dancer, but as an advocate for change. Invitations to speak at conferences and panels flowed in, and on the day of the inaugural conference on inclusivity in dance, Imani took the stage before an audience of influential choreographers, studio owners, and fellow dancers. Looking out at the sea of expectant faces, she began to share her journey, from the crushing weight of harsh criticism to the exhilaration of reclaiming her passion. Her voice grew stronger with every word as she explained how she learned that a dancer's worth is defined not by a number on a scale, but by the joy and artistry they bring to every performance. When she finished speaking, the room erupted in a standing ovation, a resounding affirmation that her story had touched hearts and inspired change. In the weeks and months that followed, Imani continued to transform not only herself but also the dance community around her. Her advocacy and openness sparked heartfelt discussions about mental health, self-worth, and the need to embrace diversity in every form. Dancers from all over the country reached out to share their own stories of overcoming discrimination, and many credited Imani with giving them the courage to step into the light. As her journey unfolded, she embraced her new role as a mentor and role model, determined to ensure that no other dancer would ever have to endure the pain of body shaming or feel diminished by the narrow expectations of others. One crisp evening, as twilight settled softly over the dance studio, Imani stood before a mirror, one that had long reflected her insecurities, and saw not a broken girl, but a beacon of resilience and hope. Around her, new students filled the space with dreams and determination. In that moment, Imani knew that her journey was far from over. With every class taught, every conversation sparked, and every heart touched, she was reshaping the future of dance, one graceful, defiant step at a time. Thank you for joining me on this powerful journey of transformation and triumph. Imani's story reminds us that even in the face of cruelty, our passion and determination can light the way to change. If you found this story as inspiring as I did, please hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how this story resonated with you. Your insights and personal experiences are what make this community so strong. Let's continue to empower each other and stand together against injustice.